Welcome to Breaking the Narrative, a Stand With Us Canada podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Primorano, and in each episode, we'll dive into the fight against antisemitism and the delegitimization of Israel. From student leaders to community advocates, we'll explore how people are standing up and making a difference. New episodes drop every other Thursday, so let's get into this week's conversation. Welcome back to another episode of Breaking the Narrative, a Stand With Us Canada podcast. I'm Jesse Primorano, your host, and thrilled to be joined today by Luai Ahmed, or just Luai, as he's otherwise known on Instagram. Luai is wrapping up a tour, a North American tour, sitting on the east and west coast of the States, and now up here in Canada with us at Stand With Us Canada, meeting with students and community members to share his story as somebody growing up in Yemen, brainwashed by radical ideologies, not just against Jews, but against the West, somebody who had to unlearn all of that on his own, moving through Sweden and the rest of the world to meet people, to learn about their culture, and to understand that there's a lot more to the world than he might have been taught as a young boy in Yemen. He's used what he's learned to share that message with the world, to help people understand the dangers of radical ideologies and the importance of us all uniting against them to preserve what we love, our democracies, our freedoms, and the things that allow us to live the lives that we want to live day by day and not be persecuted by others, political or other ideologies of any kind. So Luai is here today. Luai, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's been great to spend some time with you this week. We were at Concordia on Monday, U of T on Tuesday. Yesterday we were at Queen's in Kingston. I know there's still a couple more visits to come. But it's been great to have you here because I think that you have a really unique message. And as a Jewish person, I obviously really appreciate what you bring to the world and what you share from, your experiences in the Middle East. But I think beyond that, people ask a lot, what are these allies doing? What makes them decide to speak up? As you're going to hear, as our audience will hear, obviously you've sacrificed quite a bit. But the thing that we have in common is our hope for a better future for the world. So Luai, tell us a little bit about your upbringing. Tell us a bit about, what your life was like in Yemen that led you to start this journey.
So I think I would have to start with my family and my background because I would not be the person that I am if it wasn't for my mother and my father. And my mom basically was married at the age of 8. And in a society where 50% of the girls are married off before the age of 15, that is very normal in Yemen, which is, I've come to know, is something that not many people know about Yemen. So when I was going around the store and every time I said my mom was married at the age of 8, everybody would go, oh! And to them, I'm like, you're all shocked, but this is my reality. This is what I grew up in. My aunts and my cousins, we'd go out when I would be a teenager and I'd be like wearing shorts and a shirt. And literally everybody, all my cousins and my aunties would be covered head to toe. And I thought that that was normal. I thought that that was the norm and what should happen for women, that they should be covered head to toe because of the brainwashing that I was subject to in school. And my mom, because she was married off at the age of 8, she refused to get married and she started screaming and she had a mental breakdown and she rejected the idea and decided to educate herself. So they decided to marry her off when she was 15.
Oh, they waited until she was 15?
Yeah, because at 15 she was a proper adult.
Yeah. By our standards here in America and Canada as well.
Yeah. Soon. So then at 15, 16, when she did her high school examinations, she was 7 months pregnant and she still managed to score the 7th highest score. That allowed her to travel she got scholarships to Sussex in London and the American University in Cairo. And that kind of opened the door for her because she removed the hijab, she traveled, she started being herself. And it's because she was traumatized. Her family tried to suffocate her. When she refused to get married when she was 8 years old, they were like, okay, you're not going to get married, but we're going to cover you head to toe. So my mom would be 10 years old and wearing the niqab in school. And my mom told me that she would be sitting in class and she can't see anything on the blackboard. And she thought that was the way it is. You're not supposed to see things. But she didn't know that she had bad eyesight and her face was covered. So she was quite tortured by the society, not just in terms of getting married, but on a day-to-day basis. My mom actually wanted to be a police officer as a reaction to this oppression, and she figured out that you cannot be a female police officer in Yemen. So she was like, how can I fight against this? So she learned that she would have to be a human rights activist. So she traveled, studied political science, gender studies, and everything about women and politics. Met my father in Cairo. At that point, she left my older brother in Yemen with my grandmother because she couldn't take care of him. She was a child herself, so when she held my brother, it was a child holding a child. So she left him, went to Cairo, studied there, met my father, came back to Yemen. And in Yemen, she had me and my brother. And then a few years later, my father, who is a very famous editor-in-chief and huge pro-Palestinian, pan-Arab nationalist leader in Yemen, he was assassinated a few years later by the government. And 2 years after my father was assassinated, my mom started the first feminist human rights organization in Yemen called Sisters Arab Forum for Human Rights. And my mom became a very problematic, loud, annoying, contrarian voice to the Yemeni society. She was the only woman who was, not wearing the hijab, driving around with her scarf flying out and beautiful, colorful clothes. So she was very distinctive in Yemen. And everybody knew my mom. So because of that, we actually got subject to a lot of death threats and assassinations. My brother was actually kidnapped. And I actually realized on this tour while I was giving a lecture, in one of the, I don't remember where, but I started talking about the hostages and how when I first went to Israel, I arrived at the hostage square. And then I said it was important for me in Tel Aviv when I first got to Tel Aviv to get the hostage square because the hostages were one of those things that made me, despite Hamas, who I prior to that liked and thought that they were doing great and that violent resistance is important. But then when I saw the hostages were one of those things that made me, we'll get to that in a bit, but my own brother was taken as a hostage by tribal terrorists, and I remember my family turning upside down during those days when my brother was taken, and he was taken because of my mom. He drove somewhere and they asked for the car license and all of that, and they saw that it was my mother's car, and they figured out he's her son, and they kidnapped him for a few days, and then they brought him back. But during that time, I remember that the whole hostage thing in my family it scarred my family for some reasons. For a while, we thought we lost my brother for a few days. So I think that helped me. And I only realized this, why the hostages were also a big part of my change. But my change and my transition and my journey are, I tell the audiences all the time, there's literally 1,000 things and 1,000 stories I could tell. But I pick the most important ones that I think are important to the audiences. So even when I speak to if I know that I'm speaking to non-Zionist kids, there are certain stories I want to highlight to them that I think it would touch them in a certain way. When I'm speaking to Jewish kids, I want to give them more hope. I want to make them feel more resilient and more confident in their Zionism and in their people, and also be critical towards Israel, because Israel is not a perfect country. There is no such thing as a perfect country, and Israelis know this.
There's no such thing as a perfect anything.
Exactly.
Right? And I think that's part of the conversation too, is that, it's not black and it's not white. There's a lot of in between, and I think what we can do in terms of looking at contrast of things is to compare, the ways of certain lives and cultures, right? And to look at, certain parts of the world and understand, is this the side that I want to be on, or is this the side that I want to be on? And I think part of your journey from Yemen to, where you are now is to see, that there are ways of life that are, better than others, right? In terms of just creating a happiness, creating the right culture. So I want to hear a bit more about Yemen. I think the idea obviously is to set the stage, right? For the audience to help understand, what made you the person that you are today, how you became so passionate about these issues.
Right.
And so I want to hear more about your mom.
Yes.
I want to hear more about, the first time you ever heard about a Jew, when that came to be. But let's talk about your childhood a little bit.
Right. So, my mom is very quintessential because without my mom, had I gone through every single thing I had gone through, I would have still been resistant. But because my mom was kind of going against her family, she, when my mother and I argued today, and she's telling me I'm going against everybody in my society, I'm like, guess what, mother? You did the same thing. So my mom created this, paved the way for me to be an annoying brat who annoys my family or rejects whatever my family believes in. But I'm sitting here in front of an incredible, wonderful, hilarious Jew. But the first time that I ever heard about you was in my local mosque in Sana'a, Yemen, when we repeat after every Friday prayer at the end, may Allah make us rich, and everybody repeats Ameen. May Allah make us prosperous, and everybody repeats Ameen. May God make us blah, blah, blah. And then at the end, may Allah kill the Jews. Ameen. May Allah kill the Zionists. Ameen. May Allah destroy Israel. Ameen. This happened. That was the first time, and I absorbed Jew, Israel, Zionism as devils, evil. And it was also the fact that my imam, my guide to life and the creator and understanding of the universe, was telling me that the creator himself believed in the destruction of these people and was attempting to destroy these people and these evil, conniving, malicious group. So from the get-go, in my mosque, in my house of God, I learned that people like you should be killed, or I should personally kill you myself. In my schools, the Palestinian flag is everywhere in Yemen, even in supermarkets. In supermarkets in Yemen, there are these boxes where you donate for Palestine, and there's also signs of apartheid and genocide and evil Zionists. In my school, you'd get these brochures that tells us to boycott these products. Coca-Cola was one of them. And they said that if you flip Coca-Cola, it looks like no Allah, no Muhammad in Arabic, and it's intentional that the Jews did this to send subliminal messages to the Muslims and Arabs that we're going to get rid of your religion and your people. Believed in schools and socially that Israel was put in the center of the Middle East, right at the heart, to divide the Arabs and Muslims and keep them separated, unable to reach each other. Believed also that the Jews were turned into apes, and then from apes to humans, and that makes them really, really ugly, and their ugliness is also a part of their hatred and jealousy of the Arab Muslims. We socially, I would hear from everyone basically that the Holocaust never happened and it should have happened. And not just that, there are political leaders of parties in Lebanon, in other Middle Eastern countries. In Lebanon, there's a political leader that went on national TV and said this exact same sentence. I once said this, by the way. I said, in Yemen, we believe that the mainstream narrative about the Holocaust is it never happened, and if it did happen, it would have been a good thing.
Right.
And it should have happened.
Yeah, it's amazing because typically Holocaust denial at least is just it ends with Holocaust denial, but I've never actually heard somebody say it didn't, but it should have.
Yeah.
Well, if you think, let's just call it what it is, that it did happen, and you should just own that.
Right.
It's interesting because we talk right, we'll come back to Canada in a little bit, but we're talking so much right now about the way that people are being brainwashed by what they're seeing online. And again, when you talk about the Palestinians in Gaza, a big part of the conversation is that they're born and raised to think that their life's purpose is to kill Jews, right?
Right.
Not every single one of them grows up to feel that way, but it's a part of their educational materials. We've seen it. We've seen the copies of this stuff where they're taught Jews are the infidels, the goal of, one of our goals is to rid this region and ultimately the world of Jews. But even in Yemen, the same thing is happening, right? Yemen's not, of course, now the Houthis are, there's a war with Israel. But I mean to say, there's so many Arab countries in the Middle East that are not directly involved with Israel, right? But nonetheless, their whole culture is to teach their children to hate, to call for death, and again, even in certain, maybe when we grew up, we were taught Nazis are horrible people and they deserve to, jail for life or death penalties or whatever it is. But nobody ever taught us to go kill them ourselves, right? No one was if you see a Nazi, you should kill them, because we're Canadian, we're not taught to murder. But it's scary to think that, not just in Gaza where they're in direct conflict with Israel, that they're taught that murder is a good thing. If you can kill whoever it is, a Zionist or this or that, whatever, and that's terrifying. And I think it speaks to a problem that we'll come back to and talk more about, because I want to let you finish your story about radical ideologies and sort of how they're taking over our planet.
Right. And I think also this is why what you said as well is also why it's so easy for the current Holocaust inversion to be happening. You hear all the time, do you see what's happening? The Gazans, the Israelis are doing what was done to the Jews. It's like the only, even the word genocide. And I actually got into big arguments with close family members who told me, what about the Holocaust in Gaza? One of my family, not family members, I have a few close friends that remained, right? After I lost everybody. And I have like a select group of Arab friends that's remained. And one of them actually told me after I came back from Auschwitz in April, when I went on a delegation with Sharaka, with Arabs and Muslims, I come back from Auschwitz and I'm sending my friends these messages, guys, like my Arab Muslim friends, and I'm telling them what I just saw in Poland, I can't put into words, I can't verbalize, I can't find the words to explain things like anything. I can't explain anything. It was just so shocking. I was just telling my friends, like, I'm traumatized by this trip. It was so heavy. And then one of my friends writes this, and I don't block anybody. I always leave my bridge out. But he wrote, what about the Holocaust in Gaza? And I almost blocked him. I was so close to blocking him, even though it's not in my nature to block him. And I wanted to block him because with the Holocaust, it's like Hitler had a list of all the Jews in Albania. We're going to get to you here and here and here. It's a plan to exterminate every living Jew everywhere. And then I've recorded an angry voice note to him explaining this and telling him, do you think that Bibi right now has a list of the Palestinians in Yemen and the Palestinians in Syria and the Palestinians everywhere, and he wants to gather them and make sure that they will get exterminated? No, because that is what genocide is, and that is why they created the word genocide. It's the intent of eradicating the entire people. But that was a moment where I almost blocked my friend at that point. But I'll also say this, the fact that this Holocaust inversion happens also because people don't know here. I wrote an article in Swedish about how people think that the Holocaust denial is just like a minimal thing in the Middle East. I was saying the political party in Lebanon on live TV says the exact same thing. He said, I like, and Lebanon is considered one of the more progressive countries in the Middle East, right? He says, no, I like the Germans. I like the Germans because they burned the Jews. And then he started laughing. The presenter moved on. He's like, oh, cool. And he moved on to the second question. The article that I wrote in Sweden was like, if any political party or leader in Sweden or the West said this, they would be completely banished from life forever. But in the Middle East, anti-Semitism, Holocaust denial, the will and need to eradicate every Jew, the Hitlerian thought is the mainstream.
Mm-hmm. And and it's the same thing with what we're seeing now. I think that what's scariest about the last 2.5 years is that the word Zionist has become basically like a code word for Jew, right? Mm. And so when they see like death to Zionists off our campuses, like this is not that far off from what you're talking about. It was the word Hitlerian? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
That's far beyond my lexicon, but the Hitlerian nature is very similar, right? Like they're trying to get the world used to persecuting Jews, even if they're not being called Jews right now. But then in time, all of a sudden, well, this group's already persecuted. Now it's okay to start calling it what it is. They didn't start killing the Jews in 1933. Right? These things take time. You need to convince a population that this certain group is subhuman, whatever else. And that's what's happening now is the subhumanity, which we'll come back to later because even you've experienced this week. Folks stripping you of your identity because they don't agree with your politics, which we'll come back to. But for the sake of time, because, you and I, we've been talking for like 4 days and we could continue on forever. But I know, we want to keep the podcast relatively tight. So I want to just go sort of to the end of your time in Yemen. I know that your mom wanted to send you to San Francisco at one point. You didn't want to go. You thought you had work to do in Yemen and you wanted to stay in Yemen. But what was it that eventually pushed you out the door? What was it that made you understand that it was not a culture that you could any longer be a part of?
Well, it's a whole lot of things, but I would say for me it was something that a lot of Europeans and a lot of Westerners don't have and lack, which is self-preservation. I knew that I was surrounded by a culture that wanted me dead because I knew that I was gay, and I knew that the first time I knew I was gay in the same schools that taught me to hate Jews and to hate women and to hate the other. They also taught me that I, as a gay man, should be put to death, and after I'm put to death, I should burn in hell. So I think my culture kind of planted this confusion in my mind of, I grew up like my entire life thinking as a gay man in Yemen, God created me, but God hates me, but God wants me to be tortured in life, and God wants me to die. And then I learned in Islam that the more that God loves you, the more that he tortures you in this life. So I'm like, oh, God must really love me. But then I think during that time when I was like 18, 19, 20, before I left to Sweden, I had already started reading books by Stephen Hawking. I read the Bible, I read the Torah, and my mind had opened up and I became very, very critical of Islam. I called myself an anti-theist. I rejected the idea of religion completely. To me, religion was just an opiate of the masses. It was destructive. We had to get rid of it. Every religion. No matter what religion. And that is because I was so poisoned by Islam. Like my entire life, I was told my own religion and my own God wanted me dead. So I was completely against it. And it took so many years for me to grow out of that hatred that they ingrained in me, because I grew up and I found out there are so many other religions and so many other communities and their spirituality, and I found God in my own way, and I found my own understanding of my religion in my own way, and I started fighting against them. Now I'm in the minority. In the vast majority, I'm not, like a lot of Muslims tell me, you're not a Muslim, you're fake Muslim, and for me it's like, I don't care if you think, like, you tell me I'm not a real Muslim, but the reality is, in the vast majority of Muslim countries, me not being a real Muslim would put me in a death penalty.
So that's what I was going to say. The things that you disagree with Islam about, or with radical Islam, or the extremist ideologies that you experienced in Yemen, are things that humanity should strive for, right? That if somebody who is not practicing an extreme version of Islam should be okay with saying, like, right? And so that's the part that's interesting, is like they're mad at you for not doing things the way they want, when what they want would be to see you dead. Exactly. And like you said last night, what do you have, like 7 or 8 life sentences based on like, right? And this is the kind of thing, like, well, if you're mad at me for not being that way, then maybe you need to look in the mirror and evaluate yourself.
And I also need to highlight how the danger of this is not even just my life. Like, now the audiences that are listening to us right now are not in Yemen. So what they need to know actually is that this is not Yemen. Like, this is not just in Yemen. Like, what I'm talking about, death to America, death to the Jews, is here. And it's actually more... It's so malicious here, and it hides itself very well. So when I had a few school events that were canceled in the Bay Area, they were not canceled, they were postponed, but it was like they postponed and I was not going to be in the Bay Area, so it was technically in cancellation. And it was pressured by social media campaign that was pushed by an organization that's called CARE. And when I started looking this organization up, CARE, I just asked ChatGPT a few questions. It didn't take that much. And it turned out that it was a fascist organization that had links to the Holy Five Foundation, which funneled money to Hamas, and they also celebrated October 7. And CARE is suffocating any criticism of Islamic extremism in the Bay Area. Now, this is not just there. We also have organizations in Sweden who do this, like Ibn Rushd, like the Islamic Relief, and all these Muslims who always, in Swedish media, for example, if anything happens, they have to get a Muslim representative. Do you think they would get me? They get these people that have created these centers that basically started off by them going to Swedish or governments and saying, European governments, and saying, hey, we want to start a Muslim organization and center in order to bridge our communities and continue our culture and all of that. And then they get all this money, and all this money goes to terrorism and Islamic extremism, and everything happens in Arabic in Sweden. Sameh Egyptson, a professor who's from Egypt, made an insane wrote an insane 800 paper that was very controversial in Sweden, in Lund University, about this, about the Muslim Brotherhood in Sweden. And he revealed quite openly how they do this, how they use democracy, and how they say one thing to white people and Europeans, and then when Europeans and white people are not listening, they say something completely else. And I experienced this firsthand in the refugee that I went to in in Sweden. So I usually say in my lectures, and then I went to Sweden. And when I arrived in Sweden, I realized that I had gone from the Middle East to the Middle East. And it's so true, because I was in a refugee camp with 61 people that rejected the idea of me not wanting to fast every day and bullied me for it. They celebrated the Charlie Hebdo attack when it happened. And when they celebrated the Charlie Hebdo attack collectively, I decided, okay, I can't be in this refugee camp. So I started working elsewhere. I started working in restaurants and elderly home because I wanted to learn Swedish. Then I went to a student house in Halmstad, where I was living with a bunch of people, and I wanted someone to speak English with, and none of them spoke English at the student house. So one day a guy comes in, and I go to greet him, and I say hi, and I'm like, "Hi, my name is Luai Ahmed. I'm from Yemen. Where are you from?" And he tells me, "I'm Tal. I'm from Israel." And I freeze. I get a fight or flight reaction. My vision blurs. I can no longer see him. I can no longer hear him. And there's so much to be said about, not that moment, but, there's so much to be said about that moment, but so much to be said about that person. But when I snapped back to reality, he was like telling me, "I'm going to make you shahnoon. I love Yemeni." And he was talking about how much he loved Yemeni food, and he's going to make me Yemeni food. And I was looking at him like, what the fuck? Has no one told him? Has he missed the memo? And I also looked at him, and this was a thought in my back of my head. I was like, wait, he's kind of cute. I thought that Jews were ugly. So those
Where
were
are his horns?
Exactly. So actually, just like him being nice, him being nice and trying to make food for me, I registered as, oh, he's just being a Jew. He wants to be nice to me and fake and be nice and all of that, but behind my back he's gonna go and ruin my reputation to everybody else. So I was really scared of him. But one thought in my head that I thought that was kind of the beginning of dismantling anti-Semitism was when I looked at him and I was like, wait, he's kind of cute. Because I was taught that Jews were really ugly, and then I look at him and I'm like, he looks great. So it's that was one thought, that even though I was thinking, oh, he's being a dirty Jew, he's just acting nice and fake, another thought that was on the side was, wait, he's kind of cute.
Well, yeah, because it's kind of humanizing in a way, right? When you picture people at their souls, when you picture their souls as dirty and conniving, whatever, you imagine they would also present as gross, disgusting people, Yeah. And then you come across them and you're like, well, wait, you look, I can't imagine you being a genocidal maniac. You look really nice and sweet, and you don't seem like you have a dirty black heart. You're a lovely looking guy. These are the things that I think humanize people a little bit. And I know that you have a few more stories like that you came across Jews while you were in Sweden, and people that really helped you to understand that what you had heard was simply not true. But also along the way that you had a hard time doing that because you had so many years of brainwashing to unlearn that, even as you met some good people, which I'll let you talk about in a second.
There were just a few good Jews.
Yeah, they were just. But even then, not to put words in your mouth, you're going to talk about this, but you even said that you're they're still Jews, but they have some good qualities. Not that there were a few good Jews, but that these few good Jews had a few good qualities, but for the most part, they were still Jews.
Right, exactly. It was for example, Noah, Charlotte's daughter. So I tell the stories of how after I met Tal at the student house, then a friend of mine, one of my best friends in Sweden, Bilan, her son was a Jew. She married an Israeli Jew, and her son was Jewish. And to me, Noah was a Jew, but his mom, he was not a real Jew. Ruby, who a friend of the family, also married an Israeli and had an Israeli child, and her child was, to me, kind of Jewish, but still not. I loved Ruby and Noah, and to me, they're the cutest little babies. But I knew that they had Jewry in them, but I compartmentalized it. But there was it's hard to explain. But then I go to Stockholm, and then I find my group of friends, and one of my friends comes out to me after 8 months as a Jew. And that to me was because Alexander was one of the funniest, chillest, coolest guys ever. And we had a really strong bond. And after being really close friends, So like with Tal, we were not really good friends. He was like just my favorite person in the student house. Like I did not chill at the student house. I had my friends in Hamstad. He just was my favorite person in the student house as a Jew. And Alexander like became a really good friend of mine. And he came out to me as a Jew as 8 months. And that was kind of like, wait, a really good friend of mine is Jewish. But still, in the back of my mind, it was like, oh, but he's not really Jewish, because like he didn't tell me, he does not practice, he does not wear the Star of David. And so like there were a lot of things I'm like, he's not a real 100% Jew, because to me what a Jew was like an Israeli. Like those are the real ones. Those are the ones who are like committing the genocide. Those are the ones who hate the Arabs. With, for example, my editor, Ofer, who was one of my favorite person in the newspaper and the funniest person, who was like, he felt like a father figure to me. He also was Jewish, but it was almost like in the back of my head, he was also very Swedish somehow. He was like the funniest person, the warmest person in the newspaper. And I didn't know back then that was like the fact that he was so funny and so witty. I had no idea like a lot of Israeli Jews also are like that. So to me, I thought like what he was very Swedish, so he's not really Jewish Israeli. So I was still like, those are a few good Jews, but there are still things that explain why they're good Jews. And it was really only after going to Israel. In my lectures, I describe it as a castle of anti-Semitism that was built in the back of my mind, brick by brick. And I say in the back of my mind decidedly, because you don't see anti-Semitism. It's invisible to you. You don't know it, you don't understand it. And I'll tell like a story of how I was able to kind of like see this castle in the back of my mind when I decided to visit Israel. And I arrived in Israel and I was really scared. I called my editor, the Ofer, and he told me like, don't worry, you're gonna like Israel, but like in the airport you're gonna get a lot of shit, because you know, even he as an Israeli Jew gets stopped there because he's been to certain countries or whatever. So he was like, you will probably get stopped at the airport because you're Yemeni, your country's throwing missiles at Israel. So I'm like, okay, sure. But I really thought that something really bad was going to happen to me either at the airport or inside of Israel due to the systemic brainwashing of 20 years. I was convinced that in Israel, inside Israel, I would have an altercation with an IDF soldier who would not speak English or Arabic and see my ID, sees that I'm an Arab Muslim through my name, gets angry and shoots me. That's my idea of Israel, that Israelis and Jews, when they know you're an Arab and you're inside the Israeli territory and you don't have the right to be there, you get shot.
Okay, so hold on. Let me pause this story for 1 second if I can. Okay, we're going to press pause right here on your being afraid of the IDF soldier shooting you when you arrive at the airport. What we didn't really explicitly cover that I wanted to talk about in like just 2-3 sentences.
Right.
What made you go to Israel? Like you moved to Sweden to escape radical ideology. You didn't move to Sweden because you love Jews and you wanted to learn about Judaism, right? So then what was it that ended up pushing you to go to Israel? A couple of sentences.
Oh, so it was October 7. When October 7 happened, I started looking at the footage. Like I just opened my X account and I'm looking at the footage, and first thing I see was the video of Noah being dragged. And I remember even like when I saw that footage, and Noah looks kind of a little Asian. And I remember like as I saw the footage, I'm like, wait, Israeli? Aren't they white? Like it's hard to like, so I'm looking at the footage and then I realize what's happening there. Also, when I first was seeing the footage of Noah being dragged, I thought it was cinema. I did not think that it was real. I thought it was like some fake tweet, like saying some crazy things about Israel. But I started seeing other footage and I started going back to the Noah. It was a slow process of realizing what's happening in Israel. And then I realized what's happening there. And as soon as I realized, oh, these are Israelis and they're getting slaughtered, and I was looking at the footage and the pictures that were coming out, my instant thoughts were like, oh my God, this could have been Ruby. This could have been Tal. This could have been Ofer. This could have been... I could not disconnect myself from the people that were being maimed and dragged into Gaza. And I keep scrolling, and eventually I reach my friends and cousins and family, and everybody celebrating and saying hashtag Free Palestine on October 7th. Hashtag Free Palestine. Revenge is here. They got what they deserved, and a whole lot of stuff like that. And I was like stuck in this limbo of my own friends and family who I've lived with and loved and grown with are justifying the slaughter of my new friends of family who have helped me and nurtured me and given me a new home and helped
and proved to you that they were human beings.
Yeah.
Right? Like, more important than anything else, showed you that they were just human beings who were being murdered, massacred, like you talked about, right? And I think
exactly. And also, and these people, the few good Jews, like, even though I kind of separated them from Israeli Jews, they're not really Israeli Jews. They go to Israel. So when that was happening, like, even though they were not real Israeli Jews, like, they go to Israel. They could have been, like, Charlotte and her daughter Ruby, they go to kibbutz. So, like, when I found out that was happening in the kibbutz, I thought Ruby could have literally been dragged into Gaza. So it was, to me, like, even if I had really negative perceptions and thoughts about the state of Israel, and to me, like, I just thought of the people that I knew, and they could have been there.
Yeah. And this, what you're about to go back to talking about now, actually really highlights that, right? Because you were in this moment of pain and sadness and fear of saying, okay, this could have been people that I know and love. And you felt sympathy for the attack, and you felt anger about the celebration of the attack. But still, going to Israel, some of those preconceived notions that you had remained there, right? It wasn't that you were sitting in Sweden thinking, well, Israel is a perfect place and the Jews are a perfect people and everyone is safe no, you still had some preconceived notions, but you didn't allow those to dominate your thoughts and convince you that massacre was okay, right? Which is a lot of what we're seeing on campus today, is that people are critical of Israel. Maybe this place wouldn't accept me if I went there, if I'm brown, black, whatever it might be. Maybe they have some ideas that it's a racist colonial project. Of course, not true. But they call for its destruction. Right? That's the difference between you and them, is that you were able to see, like, things can be flawed without needing to be destroyed. Right. Human beings can be flawed. Nobody should be murdered. And so let's go back to that for a second. So you land in Israel. You have this fear that you could just be shot by an IDF soldier at the border. But you make the trip anyways.
Yes.
You feel this compulsion to go there, to see it for yourself, to continue your learning through that fear. Right. Which, again, like I said, is fascinating, that, like, you have this love in your heart, but you still have this fear at the same time.
Right.
So tell me a bit more about that experience, what it was like landing in Israel. I interrupted your story before, so go back to where you left off.
Yeah, I think I have a little ADHD, so I'm gonna keep going. But it's all like. But
that's why this conversation. We've done really well. Like, we actually really have stayed on track for the most part. But the problem is we're only like 20% through what we're supposed to talk about, and like 50% through our time. So that's the thing. For those,
but it's all intertwined. It's all intertwined.
But I have a couple things I really want to ask you. So let's do this one in a few minutes. Let's talk about Israel.
I'll try. So I was convinced that best case scenario, I'm gonna get spat on, told to, like, go back to where I came from, shoved, pushed. Worst case scenario, I would be shot in Israel, and I was scared because at that point I had already uploaded a few videos saying, those who are justifying the slaughter and murder of Jews, you're not on the right side of history or on the ISIS side of history, which eventually led to, like, most of my family members excommunicating me. So I thought that I already did all of this, like, defending Israelis in Israel, and now imagine me going to Israel and then getting shot. It would be the most embarrassing death in the Middle East, and my mom would be embarrassed to death. So I had all these, like, fears, and I was really scared on my way, and I thought, IDF soldiers were going to strip me naked in a dark room in the airport. So I'm sitting down, and I'm waiting for the IDF soldiers at the border control, and they tell, like, the cutest little girl comes up to me and says, like, "Hi, are you Luai?" I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, we're just going to ask you a few questions. I'm like, okay. I was so shocked. I thought that she was going to take me to, like, the dark room, but, like, she didn't. She just, like, asked me questions. And I remember she asked me like, why are you coming here? What do you want to do in Israel? And I told her, well, I grew up my entire life hating this country and hating these people and having these ideas. But October 7th happened. I condemned it because I'm against terrorism, and I'm here to just look at the country. I'm a journalist, and I'm here to like learn about the country that my entire life I learned to hate. And she was like, okay, cool. And we had the cute interaction where I was getting messages from my boyfriend, so I look at my phone, and she looks at my phone, and she sees that I have Taylor Swift on my background, and she goes like, is that Taylor Swift? And I'm like, you're a Swiftie? And we start talking about Taylor Swift for a few moments after she saw that I had Taylor Swift on my phone. And then she goes back to like, okay, now I need to ask you a question. So like, who did you come here with? And I tell her, well, I came here with my boyfriend, but because he's blonde and he's blue-eyed, you let him right in and you stopped me here. I was being cheeky, and she smiled and really blushed. And to this moment, I still remember her accurate. Like, I don't have the best memory. I forget well, like what we ate yesterday. I really forget the dumbest things. But certain things in my life are ingrained in my brain. Like her like blushing, I see whenever I gave the lecture and I was telling the story, whenever I said she blushed, I could literally see her blushing in front of me and saying the sentence that I was saying to all these crowds. She blushed and looked at me. She was like, okay, yes, I'm stopping you here for a few questions and then we're gonna let you in, but if I come to Yemen, you would shoot me in Yemen. And that was one of the most shocking moments in my life. That was a moment I usually describe, the castle of anti-Semitism. You can't see it because of a thick layer of a lens of anti-Semitism in your eye. And I think meeting Tal was an important way to remove that lens. But I was pointing out the double standard. I was calling her a racist and a hypocrite. You're letting my blonde, blue-eyed guy because you're a racist apartheid regime, and you're stopping me because I'm an Arab Muslim because you're racist, basically. And she flipped the script and showed me a double standard that I had never thought of or even envisioned in my brain, which was, I'm here in the state of Israel about to enter the country after having a nice conversation with this lovely Swiftie, while in my home country, if she would arrive, she would actually be slaughtered, and the same things that happened in October 7 would happen to her at the airport. And it's like she stunned me and I froze and I did not know what to say. And then we continued the conversation. And as I was leaving, she said, by the way, my boyfriend is half Yemenite. And then I go in, and now I even tell people in lectures, like, my boyfriend's half Yemenite or my girlfriend's half Yemenite, like something is half Yemenite or Yemenite. I hear from Israelis all the time. Like I even heard it like yesterday from a girl called Shohar. She told me my boyfriend is Yemenite, and I'm like, exactly, like everyone is married to a Yemenite.
What about Canadians? My best friend is half Yemenite.
See, my best friend is half Yemenite. My mother is half. Like the Yemenites have really occupied this.
Luai, I'm half Yemenite.
You're not.
Okay, so look, we're really going to run out of time soon, so I want to keep this last thing here, not the last thing, but the last part of your story really focused for a second. I think what happened in the airport that day was that you realized that much of what you were taught about Israelis was an inversion of the truth, right? That the things that were right to be said about this young woman traveling to Yemen and being executed at the border, rather than you coming to Israel and being welcomed with open arms, despite admitting that you were taught to want to murder everyone living in the country. There were more stories like that where you started to realize that the picture that was painted of the Jews and of the Israelis was actually the picture painted of the people who were oppressing you your entire life,
right?
Who would oppress the Jews in the same way if they could. Thank God they can't. Now, but they did actually for centuries in their countries before the Jews were expelled, but that's for another time.
Right.
So is there one story that you want to tell about your time in Israel that you thought taught you something new that you didn't learn before? And let's keep it tight. Let's keep it like a minute or two here, because I have a few things I want to ask you before we go.
One story. Oh my God, you're putting me on the spot. There's like 1,000.
I know.
And usually like in the lectures, I have like 3 quintessential ones. So I'm just going to tell the Arab Muslim one.
Okay.
So,
it's a good choice.
Thank you. So like Sharaka took me around for the week, and I remember I was telling Sharaka, listen, I'm coming here, I need to ask all the controversial questions. Is that okay? And they told me, of course, you can ask Don, who is the CEO of Sharaka, Don Pfefferman, who's an incredible guy. He told me, listen, Luai, you can ask any questions that you want, like whatever. And so I remember like when he told me there's so many things that happened, but like him telling me, of course you can ask any question. To him, it was like a matter of fact, like, of course you can ask any questions you ask from any experts or journalists.
No way. Okay, folks, so this is a first for us over here at Breaking the Narrative. We were interrupted by a fire alarm.
Yes, we were.
And it's funny because I can't say, like I said, it's the first time it's happened on the podcast, but I don't often get fire alarms.
It's because I'm here.
But the last time I was with a Yemenite, excuse me, I was at a wedding in Israel for the friend I mentioned. I wasn't joking. My best friend is half Yemenite. And while we were at the wedding, the Houthis shot a rocket towards the part of Israel that we were at celebrating the wedding. And the alarms went off, and we had to run to the shelter. And so now here I am with you. This fire alarm went off, and we had to run outside, but it still felt a lot more calm than the last alarm that I had next to a Yemenite person. So, Luai, thanks for your patience, and let's get back to it. So I think that there's a lot of... like your stories go on forever, and I'm going to tell the audience so that they know too, but there's a book coming out soon that's going to have, all of the most important stories that have made Luai the person he is, in more detail than we had time to cover today. So I want to pivot for a little bit just as we wrap up the podcast, and talk about more, some of what you've learned from these stories. Okay. So something you talked about earlier was this notion that, there are folks who are almost perverting Islam by, coming to Americans, to white people, Europeans, whatever else, and essentially raising funds in the name of Islam and then diverting those funds to extremist terrorism.
Right.
So now, obviously, this is perversion of Islam. I'm not claiming this is Islam, but there are bad actors in the movement who are tarnishing the reputation of the Muslim community.
Right.
And you actually had what I thought was an immense amount of courage to say that online, to say, we need to look inward and address these issues. And those issues exist in every community, especially in religion. There are extremists in, most groups. But I know this is an issue that's particularly relevant to you.
Right.
And I guess my question for you is, how do we identify this and call it out? Because I think a big problem is that when people like me, people in Canada, America, want to call something out like this, our fear is being painted as Islamophobic.
Right.
Is that we're criticizing Islam rather than the people who are destroying Islam.
Right.
And the same thing can be said about what's happening in Gaza, right? Is that they look at Israel as the oppressor and killer of the Palestinians, but in reality, it's Hamas who has their thumb on the Palestinians, who's putting them in harm's way.
Right.
And so how do people call this out for what it is in a way that identifies it to the public and helps us address something real that is hard to talk about without sounding Islamophobic or being called Islamophobic? How do you defend it when people say to you, "You're not a Muslim. If you're saying these things, you're not a real Muslim"? What's your argument?
So when people tell me you're not a real Muslim, I'm like, well, Muslims should be more like me. Muslims should be accepting and tolerant and should accept the other perspective, accept that there are other people who don't follow Islam, accept that there are Muslims who are gay Muslims who don't identify with the Quran, Muslims who don't want Sharia, Muslims who want to separate the Quran from the state. The issue is that the vast majority, the mainstream Muslim community is still stuck in the medieval times where there is no separation between state and church, state and mosque. In the Middle East, in most Muslim countries, the state is the mosque. The state is the Quran, and that's what a theocracy is. I think it is important to highlight that there should be a different definition for what Muslim hatred is. Muslim hatred, in my opinion, it should be called anti-Muslim hatred, not Islamophobia. And I have written a lot about this in Sweden because even if you're trying to highlight anti-Muslim bigotry, which exists, if you say Islamophobia, people will not listen to you because people are afraid of Islam. And of course, people are afraid of Islam. The things that they see from Islam are not very appealing. A lot of people know that the Muslim community murders Muslims in 13 Muslim countries, that 57 Muslim countries will slaughter you will jail you for being an atheist, or for leaving Islam, or for being critical of Islam, for being a free Muslim like myself. So all free Muslims like myself who don't follow the Sharia, don't believe in the Sharia, and just want to retain the heritage, the beauty, the traditions, Ramadan, the Eid celebrations, the history of Islam, which is full of blood just like any other nation's history. But the problem is we're still in that history. We have not moved past it. I think it's important to highlight that there should be a new term as anti-Muslim bigotry or anti-Muslim hatred. That way I can say anti-Muslim hatred targets me and targets Muslims. Islamophobia is akin to a word like Judaism phobia. You can be Judaism phobia because not Judaism, like Torah phobia, because the Torah is just a book, and if I'm afraid of a book, it's just the book itself that I'm afraid of. I don't like what the book says. Same thing with Bible phobia or Christianity phobia or Hindu phobia.
The idea being that you're against thoughts rather than the people themselves.
Yes, religion is spiritual. There are many aspects to it, but it's, at the end of the day, it's a group of thoughts. And we as human beings in this modern world are allowed to be critical of thoughts. Therefore, you can be critical towards Islam, you can be critical towards Christianity, you can be critical towards the Judaism, but you cannot be critical of Muslims themselves as beings. You cannot confront a Muslim and tell them, hey, you as a Muslim. By the way, once I was working in Sweden, and a friend of mine, a Swedish guy, told me, oh, you're Muslim. And back then, like in the beginning, when I was still in the beginning of Sweden, I was very like anti-Islam and anti-religion, anti-theist. I was completely rejecting the idea of religion at the time. Now I have a completely different understanding of religion as I grew. But back then I was still anti-Islam, and I thought like we needed to eradicate the idea of religion and religiosity in the world in order for the world to thrive. But anyway, so when I was in that thought, I was confronted once by a coworker who told me, but you know that you Muslims come here and you rape our women. Why do you do that? Now, if I were sitting in an intellectual discourse, I could talk about the fact that there's mass harassments that happen in the Middle East if women don't dress up head to toe, about the way that we perceive and look at women is perverted and sexualized and sick in most cases. We don't look at women as full-fledged human beings in courts or in real life, and that is an issue that leads to rise in rape and in violence towards it's a whole thing. But like, when he was telling me, you Muslims come here and rape women, that is not Islamophobia. That is anti-Muslim bigotry. He's telling me that I am here and I was going to go rape women, even though I'm gay. Like, I was going to rape the men, right? I'm joking. Okay. I'm joking. But like, it was kind of like, what are you talking about? And I started like taking a very, very pro just to him, even though at that time I was like very anti-religion. I started telling him, what are you talking about? The religion is separate from the people. And he was telling me, yeah, but you come here. I'm like, you're saying me. And it was not like an angry conversation. I was laughing at him. But the thing is, Muslims are people, right? And in many parts, they live in these countries and institutions that feed them what Islam is. So we cannot like hate Muslims. If someone wants to be scared of or hate Islam or Christianity or Judaism, they have that right, because these are sets of thoughts, even if they're followed by people. The people themselves, Muslims, Jews, Christians, those are separate from these ideas, because there's, like Rihanna said, there are 2 billion ways to be a Muslim, because there are 2 billion Muslims, right? So why should I why should I take responsibility for what my community is doing, right? If anything, like, my community should change and I should help them change. So I do think that anti-Muslim bigotry highlights hatred towards Muslims, while Islamophobia is a word that we need to flush out the toilet.
Right.
Down the toilet, sorry.
Yeah, out, down, whatever else it might be.
Anti-Muslim bigotry, anti-Muslim hatred is a real thing, and it's racist. It's like anti-Semitism, like racism, just targeting Muslim and hating them just for being Muslims. Islamophobia is a word that serves no one, and it actually just serves the Islamists who come to the West and weaponize Islam against white people who know nothing about the Middle East.
Okay, so this is what I'm trying to say, right? Is that like, you know, there are Islamists that are different than Muslims, right? Like we talk about Muslims. You're a Muslim. Like you're not the first Muslim I've ever met by any stretch of the imagination, but I've never met an Islamist.
Yes.
I've only seen Islamists like behind fences at protests in Toronto.
Right.
This is the part that I'm trying to, I think, is like of major concern to our viewers.
Right.
Is that we need to find a way. What you just talked about is like really fair, and I think is actually more relevant to the Muslim community in many ways.
Right.
But for us as Canadians, we need to confront Islamism where we see it.
Right.
We need to address the fact that we are welcoming it into North America without conflating that with Muslims.
Right.
If you said to me, Canada, welcomed X amount of Muslims into my country this year, my first thought wouldn't be, oh, what a problem. This is an issue. I can't believe so many. It's the Islamism that are seeing on the streets themselves. What do we do? Because we can't address it without being called Islamophobic.
Right.
I don't want to come across as Islamophobic because, this certainly isn't the case. How do we talk about this? Because our society is on the brink of real change.
On the brink. So I think it's important, like Islamophobia. If someone calls me Islamophobic, I don't stress it at all, because Islamophobia is irrational fear, right? I am not irrationally fear of my Muslim community. I am rationally fearful of the fact that I would be slaughtered in 13 Muslim countries, be jailed.
Nothing irrational.
There's nothing irrational about fearing what they did with the religion, right? So I think when having these conversations, I don't think people should be scared of the word Islamophobia. If someone calls you Islamophobic, you should point it out. Be like, that's not a thing. You can talk about anti-Muslim hatred. That's a thing. Islamophobia is a perverted word that was created to be weaponized for the expansion of the Islamic conquest agenda. The Muslim Brotherhood say it themselves. We will spread Islam. And the Muslim Brotherhood have said that they have not said their charter, their aim, which they're very explicit about, which most Muslim Brotherhood people know about, is they want to take over the West through three ways. One, migration. And this country that I'm in right now, one of the reasons that you and I realize how it's one of those countries that is fast forwarding itself towards suicide is because they've had extremely generous migration policies here, just like the country I'm coming from now, Sweden. And Muslim Brotherhood chose migration as the main and key component for moving to or taking over the West and applying Sharia law. The second thing is birth, by having children. And the Muslim community has a lot of children, and it is a plan by Islamists, Islamofascists as I call them, to take over by giving birth a lot of children, so outnumber the native population. And the third one is democracy / multiculturalism, where you say, because we have religious freedom, because we have multiculturalism, because it's a democracy, then our narrative and our Islamofascist narrative should be accepted and financed and funded, and it is. So those things are very important. I think, like with these institutions that are being financed right now, they are spreading their vitriolic cancer to the people, and they're also marrying the left in many of these places, because the far left in Sweden, in Canada, wants to protect the minorities, wants to protect the oppressed, and in their view, the Muslims, the Islamists are oppressed.
Well,
Sorry, I'll just say one last thing. Because I'm sure that many people are wondering, what is a Muslim and what is an Islamist? What makes a Muslim? What makes how do you know if someone is a Muslim and someone is an Islamist? And there's a very simple answer for that, but it's also very complicated. So the answer is, a Muslim is someone who has their own way of following their religion. They follow it and they do not enforce their religion on other people. If you ask them, what do you think that Sharia should be applied in a country? If they say yes, then they're Islamist. Period. Because Sharia in its essence excludes and persecutes and kills. So someone says, I want Sharia in Yemen, they're Islamists. Now, if someone says they want Sharia and they're in Europe, like in Canada, they're not only Islamists, they're extremely dangerous colonial Islamists. So that's the main distinction between a Muslim who keeps it to himself and an Islamist. I would even argue that a father who forces his children, who doesn't want Sharia, but forces their children to follow their version of Islam, and if the children don't want to, he punishes them, then he's an Islamist as well, because he's still forcing their
about
ideology.
Forcing your ideology onto somebody else through the threat of persecution or pain of some kind.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because look, I know a lot of people who were, forced to eat kosher and, whatever as a kid, but they certainly weren't, punished, put to...
You cannot compare, like, even in the extremities of the ultra-Orthodox community, you don't have honor killings. Like, if there probably is or has been honor killings in the ultra-Orthodox community in Israel, but it's such a small minority.
Honor killings in the Jewish ultra-Orthodox community in Israel?
No, I'm not saying that it's happening, that it's systemic, but there has been, like, someone has told me that someone has killed their child or something for some reason, and they were, like, putting it as an evidence that even the Jews have, like, extremities. And I was telling them, when that happened, it was... If it did happen, I'm not sure, but it was probably hated, looked down upon, it was banished.
Yeah, it's like a one-off. It's like saying, like, if an American guy who was an atheist killed his child because she felt like she had disrespected him and he went into a fit of rage.
Exactly. It's an anomaly.
Anywhere, anytime. It's an anomaly.
It's an anomaly.
Yeah,
but in my society,
There's
exactly.
no part. This is what we're saying. Like, when people tell you who they are, you have to believe them, right?
Yes.
When you talk about, like, is it written into Jewish law that if your child does X, Y, and Z, they should be put to death? No. Is it written into Sharia law? Yes. The Muslim Brotherhood documents that you were just talking about, like, this idea of colonizing the West is written in their founding documents.
Yes.
Hamas's charter talks about destroying every Jew in, from every depth of the world.
And taking over the world with Islam.
Right. The IDF, mandates and laws and the Israeli government's, policies do not explicitly call or long for the death of anybody. These things are in writing and people don't want to believe them.
You know why? You know how I tell the story about Tal, like the first year that I met, and when he was being nice to me and he was telling me, I'll make you jahnoon, I love Yemeni food, and I did not believe him. I thought he was being fake. You say if someone tells you who they are, you believe them. With this anti-Semitic world that we live in, when the Jews tell you who they are, you don't believe them.
Yep.
And when the Arab fascist Muslims tell you who they are, you support what they do. Like, what happens now is, like, when these people, like, we're going to talk about, like, what happened in the university campus, and one of the things was the girl who was, like, where the Palestinians, the Gazans who were against Hamas were killed, and she said, well, they're collaborators, right? They should be killed. They deserve it.
Let me just paint this picture for everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, what we're going to do now, let's pivot for a second. I want to talk to you about radical ideologies infecting, now we're talking about Canadians, not just, I'll come back to that in a second. But what I want to take a few minutes to do now is a segment we've never done on this show before, which is what we've heard recently on campus, all right? And we've been on campus with Luai for the last 3 days, and we have heard some of the most unbelievable stuff. And honestly, I think we can keep doing this. Like, this should be a segment we continue. But for now, we're going to have a segment. We've never had a segment on our podcast.
But now it's an official segment.
It's an official segment called What We Heard on Campus This Week with Luai. And what the story he was just talking about was that a young woman who claimed to be Palestinian, actually, you know what? Sorry, she was from Jordan. And she said that. She was from Jordan, Palestinian. Jordanian. Well, I'll give Jordan was established to be a Palestinian state. I think it actually lends credence to the fact that they have a state already, and I don't know what more they want. They should, anyways. So she said to you, you're talking about Hamas as the problem and that Israel is not the one oppressing the Palestinians. And you said to her, since the ceasefire, Hamas has been executing Palestinians in the streets. If it's the IDF that's killing the Palestinians, not Hamas, then how do you explain this? And she looked him dead in the face and said, they are traitors. They were collaborators with the Israeli government, and they got what they deserved. I've never heard a Muslim or anyone talk about Palestinians that way. I've heard people say Jews got what they deserved. What level of brainwashing is this, and to what extent are these people misguided enough that they are so angry at Israel that they'd rather see their brothers and sisters murdered? Anyways, I'll let you go.
It is like this idea of othering and exclusion and hatred, which the Jews know very well. The thing is, we've seen it also with Charlie Kirk, is that the far left has adapted this idea that they have the right to be fascists, to be dictators, to be evil even, and to be extremist, and to believe in murder, and to believe in all of this thing, because according to them, what they're dealing with is Hitlerian. In their heads, they think that Jews and Israel are the new Nazis, and therefore they are the defenders of Western civilization. And because of this really core belief that they're on the right side of history, that they are defeating the neo-Nazis, it's insane that they think that neo-Nazis are Jews, but that's how delusional they are. And they think that they're defending Western civilization when they are literally shaking hands with Islamofascists that would kill them in our countries. So like these events, the 3 schools that were canceled in Bay Area, when I looked up and I was looking at their organizations, I found out that they're Islamists. Now these people would hang me and these Queer for Palestine people in Yemen, in Gaza, in the West Bank, in most Arab Muslim countries. And they don't want these Islamists don't want it to be revealed here. They don't want people to talk about it here, because the Western when I talk to like Queers for Palestine and these far left radicals, and I tell them about this threat towards LGBTQ people and women, cognitive dissonance. Mm-hmm. They get like shocked. They don't know what to say. They start whatabouting, like, oh, but what about it's so? But like they're committing genocide. It's like you try to explain the moral bankruptcy in the Arab Muslim world and the lack of progress and humanity towards Jews, black people, not even Jews. I usually, when I talk to people, I try to show like it's about gay people, it's about women, it's about black people. It's so sick actually how when I try to let people understand how demonized Jewish people are, I have to mention other oppressed people in the Middle East to show them that the Jews are only caught in this tornado of moral bankruptcy in the Middle East, where gays like me who did nothing wrong get killed, black people who did nothing wrong get oppressed and isolated, women who did nothing wrong but show their heads get slaughtered and thrown off fruit offs.
Can I jump in here for a second? I don't think it's just, sorry to interrupt you, I don't think it's just that they're caught in the tornado. I think that they are in the eye of the storm. They're being blamed. It's almost like this, right? Like in Nazi Germany, you're coming off this depression after World War I. What happened? Hitler used the Jews and other groups as the scapegoats for why the lives of the Germans were so bad. You know, if we got rid of these people, our lives would be so much better. And it feels like in order to oppress people, you need to convince them that you're not the one oppressing them, that they're in the position they are because of somebody else.
Right.
And it feels like for the entirety of the Middle East, they're oppressing women and gays and this and on and on and on. They have to have somebody to blame the poor quality of life on without taking blame themselves.
Exactly.
The Jews, the infidels.
You're right.
Little Satan.
You're right. And you're absolutely right. So like the Jews are caught in this tornado of moral bankruptcy, but the Jews are in the center of this tornado.
The Jews are the tornado. The Jews control the weather, right? That's the oldest thing in the book. So the Jews are the ones making the tornado.
Yes.
Is more what I would say. They're
the
people in the tornado.
Right.
Someone's there saying, "Hey guys, if we can get rid of the Jews, this tornado will stop."
You're absolutely right.
You know,
that is.
Just saying, like this is the theories that have been told forever that like your life sucks because of the Jews. And the Jews control everything.
Exactly.
And so on the note of Jews controlling everything that makes everyone's lives suck, let's go back to this segment of what we've heard recently on campus.
Yes.
Number 2 thing we've heard on campus this week was that 50% or more of American congressmen are Jewish. So somebody walked up to us and said, "Why do you think everyone hates Jews so much?" And we explained, well, basically what I just explained to you right now. He said, "Well, don't you think maybe it's because they control so much and people think they have too much power and influence?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean by that? What do they control?" He said, "Well, obviously the banks, this we know, but Congress and the U.S. government." I go, "How do we control the U.S. government?" He's like, "Well, 50% of elected Congress people are Jewish. 6% is the real number," which is like way punching above our weight. What do you make of that kind of comment? What do you make of these conspiracy theories that are now like just being digested and swallowed without much thought at all?
It's because they're viral. It's so much more viral to hate. It's like it's exciting. It reminds me of this thing. I was having a discussion with like an old Swedish friend, and she was telling me, like, Luai, I actually think reason that Sweden put this upon themselves, and they knew what they were doing, and they knew that they were turning their country into a dangerous country, because Sweden in the 70s and 60s was so peaceful and nice, but there was no action. It was boring. Now it's more like a Netflix series. And the human in their nature, they want action. That's why we like horror movies. We like action movies. We like things to happen around. So she was telling me that Swedes actually want their country to go into shit for that to happen. So there's like this thing in human nature where they like chaos. And I think blaming Jews is like just having an enemy is perfect, because then you know what to blame. So like when I was a child and I was learning death to Jews, death to Zionists, I was like, oh, that's why the world is shit. It's the Jews. They're the evil. They're the devil. We learn in religion that there's, angels and demons, right? Good and bad. And in life, on the ground, we don't know what is good and bad in terms of morality. It always changes, right? Like being gay was bad 100 years ago. Now it's like more okay in the West. But what is bad as creatures, right? As human beings, we have to have devils on the ground. Mm-hmm. And who is the devil? We have to have a devil in order to make life make sense to us, that there's good and there's bad, because that's how life is explained to us. There's good, there's bad. And we see it like you touch fire, you burn, right? You touch warm water, you clean your hands. So our perception of life is there's good things and there's bad things. And we know that there's good people and there's bad people, but there's also good communities and bad communities, good tribes and bad tribes. And the Jews have always been the bad tribe in the Middle East, because around the world, not just, I say the Middle East because like that's where I'm from, but in the Middle East, like it's the Jews have been labeled as evil and bad and dirty and disgusting, and which is funny because Yemen was a Jewish kingdom, so Yemen was Jewish with pagans, and then Islam came and pushed the Jews away, and now everybody thinks that Yemen is a Muslim country, which is now, but it was a Jewish country. And the Arab Muslim conquest took over not only Yemen, it took over the entire Arab Peninsula and even Asia, certain parts of Asia. So people don't want to talk about the Arab Muslim conquest, and those were actual colonial conquests, right? They actually went to lands that were not theirs. That is colonialism.
And kicked people out.
And
it's funny, again, like we've talked, I feel like this theme keeps coming up, like this idea of projecting your own sins onto the other, right?
Exactly.
Like Israel is given a state in their homeland where we have 3,000 years of history, connection to, we're attacked by our neighbors, have to defend her, and now we become this like colonial project that everyone talks about. When you talk about colonialism in school now, it's just Israel over a strip of land the size of my fingernail. When the Arab Peninsula and beyond was there's a conquest. Right. Anyways, I'm like
no, sure. Like when you look at the map, there's just like this viral picture of like the Middle Eastern map, and it's all like blue.
Yeah.
There's like a tiny little yellow dot in the middle, and they're telling you that the blue is normal and the yellow is the colonial state.
Yeah, because this is what they want, right? Like the ultimate goal is to have it all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, okay, look, let's do one more thing from campus because we're going to run out of time soon, and we still have to take some questions from our audiences from the last few nights.
All right.
So we're going to have to do all this really quickly. So let's keep this one a little rapid fire, okay? If we can.
All right.
Let's do our best. All right. This was the craziest thing I think I heard on campus. The Jews knew about October 7th a year before it happened. Not the Israelis, the Jews. Knew about it, let it happen, so that they could have a reason to justify genociding the Palestinian people.
That woman pissed me off the most. First, she claimed she was Palestinian. The good thing was there was this lovely Asian guy who was in front of me I was having a conversation with, and he was telling me, listen, I believe in the Israeli state's existence. Like, no, but why would you support Israel? And I was explaining to him, there are people here who want to eradicate this place and say insane things about Israelis and Jews. And he was like, it's not that exaggerated. What are you talking about? And then that Palestinian girl came and saved the day because she proved to him. Because she was basically saying, oh, no, Israel knew about October 7 and Israel let October 7 happen because Israelis want to kill Israelis and want to kill their own people in order to commit genocide against Palestinians.
Which, again, is a projection of what's happening on the other side of the border.
Exactly. So then I was looking at this lovely Asian guy. I'm like, do you see what she's saying? You're telling me that the anti-Semitism is not big, and she's basically saying Israelis are killing their own people in order to commit genocide. Do you see how insane anti-Semitism is? And he was actually looking at me like, and then the great thing was there was what's his name? I forgot his name, the IDF soldier.
Tal.
He was there and he interrupted and he was like, he's an IDF soldier. And he said like, I wish, not verbatim, but he said, I wish we knew about October 7. I was there in Gaza on October 7. I lost my friends. I lost my family members. I lost people. And the Asian guy was seeing this interaction. He was seeing this Israeli guy telling her, she's saying they knew it and they let it and they were killing, so they committed genocide. And he's in pain telling her, Listen, I was forced to go to Gaza. My cousins, my friends, people were dying. I wish we knew. What are you talking about? And I was happy that this Asian guy was able to see this interaction, to realize that anti-Semitism and anti-Israelism and anti-Zionism are incredibly irrational and so rabid. And she exemplified it in front of him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, rabid is the right word, but it also shows like just how easy people are to, how quick people are to believe everything.
Right.
And not only how quick they are to believe everything, but how limited they are in the scope of what they're willing to talk about or accept. Their narrative is the only narrative that's okay.
Yep.
I think we heard somebody tell you, like we talked about before, that you're not a Yemenite, right? And like, again, this notion that this person who is from Canada is trying to tell you about what you are and are not because their opinion is not aligned with yours,
right,
is the exact issue with everything that we're seeing in this world today, is that like people will literally strip you of your identity. They'll deny you of your truth if it doesn't align with theirs.
Right.
That's fascism. This is not an acceptable no?
Yeah. It's tribal fascism.
Tribal
it's
fascism.
Like you're not allowed.
You just looked like you didn't agree with me for a second.
No, it's absolutely right.
It's not acceptable. And again, like the last thing I want to talk about, our last item of things we heard on campus, and I don't want to dive into this, but I want to just highlight the magnitude of the problem with this. Is somebody said, how are they allowed to do this?
Yeah.
She came to the table. It says, I'm an Arab Muslim who supports Israel. Ask me anything. And she was genuinely shocked that this viewpoint was allowed on her campus.
Right.
Again, this is a place where their argument for what they do is academic freedom, free speech. It's a university. Everyone brings their... But when their ideas don't align with the prevailing view, you hear it. They say it. It might be a Freudian slip or who knows what. But she said, I can't believe they're allowed to do this on our campus.
Yeah.
Do what? Share his truth, his story? It's unbelievable, and unfortunately the state of where we are now. But Luai, I want to move past that, and I want to start to take some questions from our audience. Okay?
Yes.
So the first question, I'm going to give you a bit of a softball, okay?
All right.
Would you ever consider going to Israel to live or travel there? And is there any world where you could imagine your mother coming along with you to show her the realities of Israel and the people who live there?
I have said before that one day I'm going to get my mom to Cyprus, blindfold her, and tell her I'm going to take her. And then, I don't know, like roofie her. No, she has to go to Israel. If my mom goes to Israel, she's going to change her perspective on Israel completely. But no, she's not keen on going to Israel ever. But I'll try. I'll keep trying.
I don't advocate for kidnapping, by the way. So let's not.
I do. I'm joking.
No.
No, I really want my mom to visit Israel, but
would you consider living there?
Yes.
Okay.
I would.
All right.
It's like it's one of the most beautiful countries I've been to. Yeah.
Isn't it? And the people? What about them?
Oh.
Has your position like, is it weird to have something that you were so radically opposed to that you're now so radically endeared to?
It's
just like
weird.
A quick answer.
It's
isn't
weird.
that strange?
It's really strange. And I think for me, it's like a shock. It's like a shock to like Israelis are so incredible and funny and sweet and warm and loving. And it took a while. Like I've spent in total since October 7, around 7 or 8 months in Israel actually.
Oh, yeah.
So I've spent a lot of time there, and I'm still like blown away by the warmth and love and community. Like I get invited to Shabbat all the time. People want to go out and meet and party and live. It's just like, and it's so like, I love being in Israel because my guards fall down. I don't have to perform.
Yeah.
I don't have to talk. I don't have to defend Israel. When I'm here, when I'm anywhere else, it feels like I'm on guard because I know that there's a lot of anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, and people are very ignorant. So yeah, I love Israel for so many reasons, and I can definitely see myself living there.
Good. Yep. Well, I can't wait to see you there one day.
Yes.
But for now, I think that there's like a saying I've always sort of tried to base my life around. But last night in Kingston, Rabbi Erin Polanski said it herself, and I thought it was very poignant that to help people understand Jews, just invite them to a Shabbat dinner. Just let them get to know you as a person, as your culture. And being in Israel is like the most unbelievable thing I could imagine for somebody like you, because you have like this idea in your head, right? Like that you're going to go there, they might shoot you on the street, like they're violent, they're angry, they're mean, they're ugly. And then you get there and you're like, wait a second.
Right.
Like these are the best. Like, again, I'm biased, but I've talked to a lot of non-Jews that have gone there for the first time. Talk to Jews who've been there for the first time, and it's mesmerizing to be like, they have everything. They have the nightlife is incredible, but also there's the hiking, there's the desert, there's the north, like this, there's Arabs, there's Jews, there's Druze, there's Bedouins. Like, it's an amazing country. It's a beautiful melting pot. And
I need to say something about me being in Israel, because my mom, for example, and people tell me like, oh, like you like Israel and your experience in Israel. And I also get comments in my comment sections that tell me, oh, your experience, a lot of people are even right, you've never been to Israel, even though I've been to Israel a lot of times. Because they deny that I could still support Israel while visiting it. But anyway, people tell me that there are people who tell me you only like Israel because you support them and therefore they accept you. Now the thing is, my experience of the Israelis is not the people who come up to me like, oh my God, I love your work, you're amazing. Those people to me are not who I identify as Israelis, because I know that they like my work.
Yeah.
The people who I see as Israelis are the people who have no idea who I am, and then I tell them I'm from Yemen, and like those people for me are like my experience of Israelis.
It's a true litmus test, right?
Yes.
It's not somebody who likes you because you defend them on Instagram, right?
Exactly.
It's not bullshit, because people can give you that kind of fake,
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on to another question.
Right.
We only have a few minutes left. That first question, by the way, was from Suri Weinberg-Linsky. Suri, thank you very much. She was with us in Toronto on Tuesday night. Mylène Ettingen, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Mylène. She wants to know, and I think this is a really great question, we're ramping up. Mm-hmm. How would your story differ if you were not a homosexual?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
Isn't that a great question? Because so much of what prompted you to do what you've done was a fear for your own life.
Honestly, the way that I would see it is, let's say that my brother, who's heterosexual, walked my shoes. I think if actually, I would not have left Yemen if I were straight. If I were gay, if I were straight, sorry. Yeah, it's been a long tour. Sorry, guys. No, but I would have never left Yemen if I were straight, because then it would be my home. I could get married. I could be a Muslim. I could, I would have stayed. But the thing that made me walk away was the fact that I was going to be killed. And I think that is also like it fuels my understanding of anti-Semitism, and what broke the castle of anti-Semitism is like, listen, I had to flee my home. And I know what it feels like to have people want to kill you just for existing. Mm-hmm. So that kind of like makes me sympathize with the Jewish people and understand them on a level that most people wouldn't. Iranians, for example, like Iranian people are some of the biggest supporters of the Israelis and Jews, because they also know what it feels like to be slaughtered and persecuted and jailed for just being yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a great answer. Okay. Question now from Sam Azuri in Toronto. And there's a whole lot of them. So, Sam, thanks for the questions. We're going to have to pick one. Maybe, Luai, I'll send these to you because, we can answer them offline. How do you explain, this is again, I told you we're ramping up, okay? Mm-hmm. How do you explain the alliance between the Houthis, who are Shia Muslims, right? And groups like Hamas, who are Sunni? Mm-hmm. To what extent are there shared political goals, specifically their opposition to Israel and other regional powers, outweighing their historic sectarian divides?
That's a really, really good question.
Yeah.
Wow, these are really good questions. I've gotten like hundreds of questions on this story. These are some of the better
Canadians,
the best
man.
ones.
What can I tell you?
Well, I'm sorry about what's happening in Canada, but
but there's some good ones left still.
Yeah, they're good questions. So I'll say this. And this is something that I've understood now, is that the only thing, like Arabs in Lebanon and in Yemen, like the Shia and the Sunnah, like this, there's been an ongoing war, like in the religion of peace, since the 7th century. Since the 7th century, the religion of peace has had multiple internal and civil wars within itself. After Prophet Muhammad died, that's when the civil war started between the Muslims. That's the Shia and Sunnis had different ideas of what Islam was. Like right after he died, war happened.
Yep.
In the religion of peace, because there's no such thing as religion of peace. That's just like a slogan that they use to push for their sick agenda. They're trying to make it seem like anyone who... Anyway, so the only thing that unites Arab Muslims, the only thing that is able to unite them, the atheists that would get killed by the Islamists. So you have the Islamofascists who say we need to kill the seculars, we need to kill the guys, and the Arab atheists and seculars who want a secular democracy, who want the progressive state, who hate the Islamic terror. So like my liberal, secular, atheist friends have blocked me and are shaking hands with the Islamofascists. And if I tell them, so you're agreeing with them, you agree with the Islamofascists, and they're like, yeah, we agree with these specific things. We agree with the anti-Semitism. We agree with the anti-Israelism.
Right.
It's like, it's funny though. I never knew in my life that Arab Muslims, like atheist Arabs and secular Arabs and Islamist Arabs, could be united ever.
Only over their hatred for Jews.
Anti-Semitism managed to unite these people. It managed to unite the far left and the far right, and created this horseshoe theory. Exactly, the extremes meet and unite over things like anti-Semitism and anti-Israelism, and it's all based on ignorance. Because every time I hear, like when we're tabling and these people talk to me, like I've done like a lot of discussions in groups, discussions and stuff, and I'm quite fast at answering questions. Like if someone asks me a question, I can easily answer. And the reason for that is that every thought, everything they've written, everything that they've thought about Israelis and Jews and the state of Israel, I have thought, I have wrote, and I have believed in. So therefore, I can easily tackle these thoughts because I know what it is like to be that.
Yep.
So what unites the extremities is just their ignorance and the fact that they have not been to Israel. They've not really dived into the Israeli experience and the Israeli people. And that's why I recommend people to go to Israel before they open their mouths on Israel.
Well, that's the whole thing on Jews too, right? Is like that people, like the Jews have this reputation that they've now just developed over 3,000 years of being like, vermin and this and all these horrible things that have been painted as a result of like centuries of anti-Semitism. And now it's so easy for people to digest that, like you said, it's uniting people who would never otherwise be on the same page because they hear something and take it as fact rather than looking into it themselves. I don't think anybody that could ever go to Israel could go to Israel and come home and have the negative feelings that they had before they left. I think that going there is going to change anybody's mind who has a negative opinion or even a positive opinion. But it's the same thing about Jews. People don't want to meet Jews because it's almost better to have like a faceless villain that you can just blame for everything than getting to know somebody and saying, well, hold on, like I can't really, I know a nice Jewish guy, right?
So true.
And it's the same thing with the anti-Israel movement as a whole, that like when you go, I remember going to the encampments that we had all over our campuses, and you go and you try to talk to people there. They have people who come and like block you. Like they stand in the way like this and they like move so that you can't see the person because they're upset actually at the person on their side for talking to you and engaging with you. They're trying to prevent, because there's two things that can happen. One, you might find common ground and they might not have as much hatred in their hearts anymore. Or two, they might actually learn from you that something about this movement is wrong, right? Like when you say to them, like, do you know what intifada, you're holding a sign about globalize the intifada. Do you know what it is? Because they were told it means freedom, liberation, they don't know how many people were maimed and murdered in bus terror attacks and pizza cafe terror attacks. Things that will, and I hate to say this, but they will come to North America if we don't get in the way of it. I'll mention somebody who I actually know you have a relationship with as well, and I'm hugely fond of this phrase he coined, Gad Saad, a professor in Montreal.
He's incredible.
Suicidal empathy. This is what he calls it, right? Yeah. And this is what it is our fear of standing up for our identity and our beliefs in the wake of others because we're afraid that they will perceive it as racism, Islamophobia, whatever, just because we want to preserve what we believe in, which is safety, security, freedom, to walk around and not be afraid, not of Muslims, but of Islamists and of intifada. Because it isn't even just Islamists. It's going to be, I'm just telling you, that God forbid if this ever happens in North America, it's not going to be a Muslim. It's going to be a white person wearing a keffiyeh. I'm serious. Chanting, globalize the intifada. Because it's not about Muslims. It's about Islamism and radical extreme ideologies. And what we're seeing is that white people, how many freaking white people at U of T would we see wearing keffiyehs? Do they know? And they don't know anything about the keffiyeh, where it comes from, what it represents, the red hands that the people at the Oscars wearing on their pins. I'm sorry. Don't even cut that out. Do you know how fucking stupid you have to be to wear a red hand if you knew that red hand came from somebody holding their hands up for murdering somebody, even if you don't believe in, like, if you think Zionism is bad, Mark Ruffalo does not believe in murdering people. There's no way Mark Ruffalo thinks it's cool to just go murder somebody. This guy puts a fucking red hand on his chest like he knows what he's talking about, but nobody wants to learn a thing about it. It's just, sorry.
It's a combination of ignorance and also stupidity, and they want a virtue signal and show that they're standing on the right side and they're doing something great for humanity because they lack a sense of purpose. They don't know what to do with their lives. Jews are occupied with building a nation, with producing, with creating science, with winning Nobel Prizes over the amazing work that they contribute to humanity and always have. These people, are they, curing cancer? Are they coming up with any methods to cure diseases that we have in the world? No, they're wearing the keffiyeh and chanting death to Jews. While they're chanting death to Jews, are in Israel. Israel is the most thriving and productive country in the Middle East when it comes to science, academia, etc., etc. So the Jews are builders and creators, and these low lives. Okay, I need to tell a story. Okay. So in the tabling, a guy kept like walking around. I don't know if it's a guy. It's like either it's a guy, but like I think
it doesn't matter. It's a person.
They identify as they, I assume, because they were dressed anyway. Whatever they was, she came. It's what. Anyway, I've never had. So they came in front of me suddenly, and then they said, "You're stupid." And I'm like, do you want to? He was like, why are you doing this? I'm like, do you want to sit down and talk to me? He's like, no, I don't want to talk to you. And I'm like, then why are you standing here? And they were like, no, I just wanted to say that you're. And they were like standing like just like that. No, I just wanted to say that you're stupid. And then they
like with this look on their face, like this condescending look of.
And they didn't want to talk to me, and then they walked away. Now back to the girl who came and said like, how are they even allowing this? When she was saying it, I was standing in front of the table talking to this anti-Zionist Jewish woman, and she was telling me, how are they allowed to do this? And I was telling her like, what's wrong with it? She was like, oh my God, how are they allowed to do it? She was really in shock. And then the anti-Zionist Jew told her, this is the Arab Muslim guy who's sitting there. And she looked at me in disgust and walked away. And I'm like, come, let's talk. And she's like, no. And she walked away. And then I told the anti-Zionist Jew, now this is exactly a perfect representation of Israel. I am Israel, and these people are Palestinians. I'm at the table. I'm saying, come, I'm nice. I want to talk. I want to negotiate. I want to find peace. I want to find common ground. While these pro-Palestinians are walking out saying, free Palestine, screaming at me, calling me stupid, calling me dumb, and they're not coming to the table. Yep. So as it is in the Middle East right now, which most Arabs like either know and don't like, or they don't know of, is that the Israelis have been at the table all this time, waiting for the Palestinians to come and reach a deal. The Palestinians never came to the table, like these students, that the Western students have been brainwashed to adapt this Palestinian narrative of completely excluding and not listening to Israelis or the Israeli perspective.
Well, it's also beyond that. Like, it's not just about Israel. Like, this has been a problem since I would say mid 2010s, probably earlier, but that was when I really became acutely aware of it, was that people in my opinion, on a certain side of the spectrum, but I'm sure it applies to both, won't speak to each other. Right? Like, these people are not interested in having a conversation with you. I had to spend 45 minutes at U of T explaining to a student why you were here and why dialogue was important. She's like, well, there's no need. What's the point of talking? It's just manipulation. You're just trying to... I'm like, no, there's going to be a conversation where two people will have opposing views. They will share those views with each other. They will both end up learning something new. But this is the problem. It's not just about the fact that they have no purpose. It's about the fact that they will not speak to anybody who does not share their opinion. Right. And this is what's happening right now with Israel, is like that there's this pile of lies that just grows and grows and grows and grows, because these people who are walking around on campus, they won't talk to somebody like you. And I can't tell you how many times I hear from our staff, like that our students who are tabling are coming back and being like, yeah, somebody said they've like never in 2.5 years heard from a Jewish or an Israeli person about what happened October 7th. They only hear the other side. Anyways, look, we're getting really long-winded here, so I want to...
that says a lot, by the way.
It says a lot. They tell you, like, I've never heard this perspective. And this is the problem, is that they're not willing to hear it. They're not willing to talk about it. Anyways, okay. Look, 2 really quick questions, okay? Because we got to wrap up. Karen Seidman in Toronto wants to know, how is it that your father was so tolerant or supportive of your mom being an outspoken feminist at home and abroad, given his, like, the, affiliations that you were talking about and...
my father, when my mom was in Cairo, my father was the president of the Arab Student Union, not even just the Yemeni Student Union. He was, as a Yemeni, the president of the student union in all of Cairo.
Oh, so it is Yemeni.
Yeah, it is Yemeni.
I've been saying Yemeni and then correcting to Yemenites.
Oh, it's like the 4 same. Actually, I am Yemenite and Yemeni.
Okay.
Yeah, Yemenite means you're ethnically Yemeni, and Yemeni means you're a Yemeni citizen.
No, you said Yemeni twice. Yemeni means which one?
Yemeni means citizen.
And Yemenite means?
Ethnically Yemeni.
Okay, got it. All right, back to your answer.
So I'm both. Sadly, I'm joking.
No.
No, I'm proud. I'm proud.
You can be a Yemeni or a Yemenite, but not a Houthi.
Listen, I'm proud of my people. I'm proud of my heritage. I'm proud of us as people. I'm just not proud of my culture, and I think it needs to change. So my mom met him in Cairo, and he fell in love with her, and he kept like trying to, he wanted her, and she was just, my mom is kind of like me, where she's not interested in like love life and dating. She's more focused on her work because she was married off his age. She has a mission, and I have a mission as well. So my mom was not interested in him. She found it fascinating that he was smart and eloquent and all of that. But he's the one who kept like going after her. And I guess my father was a liberal. And like I told you, like you could be a secular liberal Arab and you can still like hate the Jews. That's what unites Arab seculars and
unites everyone that isn't Jewish.
And yeah, like Jamal Abdel Nasser, the president of Cairo, would go up on stage and make fun of Islamists while the crowd is laughing, right? He would go on stage and say, oh, I was just talking to an imam and he was telling me that we should make the hijab obligatory, and the entire crowd is laughing and Jamal Abdel Nasser is laughing, the president of Egypt, and he's laughing at them and he's like, why don't you cover your daughter? Your daughter is also a student. She doesn't. And like Jamal Abdel Nasser, the president of Egypt, who's a secular, probably an atheist, hated like religiosity, was still one of the biggest anti-Semites in the Muslim world, and he was my father's hero. We had a huge Jamal Abdel Nasser picture in our home, in my grandfather's home in our village, because what unites Arab Muslim seculars and Arab Islamofascists is anti-Semitism. And my mom, I guess, my father was a liberal. I guess he believed in women's rights. He believed in freedom, a modern state. And he also believed in the idea that pan-Arab nationalism is important. We need to unite Arabs. Like as a Yemeni, I cannot even go to Morocco with my Yemeni passport, even though we speak the same language, we have the same culture and religion, similar culture and same religion, right? Because there's a lot of racism between the communities. My father wanted the Arab world to unite and become one big Arab state like the European Union in order to get rid of Israel.
Right.
So that's what my father, you could still be a liberal and atheist secular and still hate Jewish people in the Middle East.
From Susan Giblin, I think in Toronto, should Israel trust Saudi Arabia and other Islamic countries in any kind of agreement, especially since most of them are not de-radicalized the way that the UAE is?
Right. So I think Saudi Arabia is on its way to become de-radicalized. So I think the UAE is to be trusted, and Saudi Arabia as well is going to be trusted. When we see the progress that Saudi Arabia has made in the last 20 years, the progress that they've made is so impressive. It's actually more impressive than the UAE, because the UAE was never as radical as Saudi Arabia. Right. Saudi Arabia is what introduced the current Wahhabist Islamofascism that we have in the Middle East. So in Yemen, for example, women covered head to toe, but they were wearing colors and traditional clothes and fun stuff. What Saudi Arabia, after the Islamic Revolution happened, is they covered women head to toe in black. They turned them from these like beautiful cultural heritage colored women into just black crows. Or ninjas, if you will. Now that Saudi Arabia did that, and now Saudi Arabia went from that to today becoming very progressive and open and liberal. Saudi Arabia has made a way bigger leap than the UAE, and they continue to make these leaps. And it's even very promising that the fact that, and I'm not a big fan of Saudi Arabia or UAE. I'm very critical to their gay laws. I'm not like one of those UAE influencers who just like want to paint Saudi Arabia and the UAE as perfect countries. They're not in any way, shape, or form, but they're showing progress, and it's good. And I think the UAE, Saudi Arabia, these two, absolutely. Other countries, let's wait for the progress to happen. Let's see what they do in their schools. When a government decides to eradicate anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism from their curriculums, then yes, they're to be trusted. UAE and Saudi Arabia have done that.
Luai, there's a few more questions that we don't have the time to get to, unfortunately.
Maybe next time I'm here.
But next time you're here, we're going to bring you on again. Yes. And for those of you whose questions were not answered here, we're going to try to get Luai to send you some sort of a response himself. But most of the questions had to do, to be honest with you, the ones that we didn't get to were mostly about your parents.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of interest in your relationship with your mother, your father, how, for example, your mom affected, this is from Jessica Goslin, how your mom affected your stance on Zionism, which I know you've talked a bit about already. And furthermore to that too, how you feel about her not supporting you going to Israel, and if there's a discrepancy between her being as you've described her, very educated and worldly, yet so resistant to accepting Israel.
Well, I'll just say,
so I was gonna say, let's just touch on this quickly before we wrap up.
Yeah. So my mom and I have had like we had a perfect relationship. She supported my feminism. She supported my attacking Islamic extremism in the West and the Middle East. She was very proud of me until October 7 when I revealed myself as a Zionist, and I after going to Israel and all that, and she was just not having it. She did block me and unblock me, and it's it's tough. She loves her son. It's described perfectly like this. My mom loves me. I've always been my mom's favorite child, so she loves me, but she doesn't like me anymore, and she doesn't like me because of the things that I do. So we try to talk about cats and gardens, and as soon as she starts talking about Gaza and Israel, I'm like, Mom, okay, let's hang up. And it's tough, but she lived in the same societies that I describe and explain. I'm just very grateful and happy that she gets really angry at me, but she doesn't excommunicate me, because if I were any other Yemenite, their entire family, their mothers included, would excommunicate them. But yeah, I am. And honestly, I do have a feeling that one day my mom might block me and just, excommunicate me. But like I said in one of the lectures, that when I was traveling from Yemen to Sweden and I was crying on the airplane, I was not just crying because I was leaving my family. I was crying because I knew that eventually I would come out as gay and talk about gay rights, and none of my family would accept that. And I didn't care. I mean, I did care that I was losing my father. That's why I was crying. But for me, talking about the truth was way more important than me maintaining my family to this very day. And this is why me talking about the truths that I found are way more important than my mom or my brother or anyone excommunicated me, because I'm gonna die anyway, Also, it's their loss if they want to excommunicate me. But for me, it's like I've been born in this position where I have to tell the truth. My truth is very dark, and it has to come out. And it doesn't matter what it is. So in the beginning, for me, it was like, they're going to hate me. They're going to excommunicate for being gay. Whatever. I don't care. I'm going to talk my truth, and I'm going to say the truth. I did not choose to be gay, and they want to kill me. It needs to stop. Same thing with Israel and the Jewish people. I saw the truth, and I'm saying it loud and proud. I'm never going to change that way. And if that's what it is for them, like the Zionism, where it was like the red line that I crossed, fine by me. If it wasn't like that, if it wasn't gay rights, if it wasn't Zionism, it might have been trans rights, it might have been black rights. It's not my problem. Their problem with empathy and lack of understanding and accepting other narratives is not my issue. But I hope I inspire them to see that there's the other side even that comes from within us.
It's unfortunate that it has to be the case, but I think that we talk a lot about the value of education, and that a lot of the issues that take place in that part of the world come from education, or a lack thereof, or the wrong kind of education, and how kids are perennially brainwashed by their parents to believe things that aren't true, to build hatred that isn't necessary and that destroys our world. And unfortunately, to break that trend, it does sometimes require for children to turn their backs on their families and to say that if you're not going to accept me because I won't accept your radicalism, then I'm sorry, I need to make the world a better place.
That's right.
It's the only way to break that kind of a trend, because it's not going the other way, right? The parents aren't going to be the ones. And so I think it's a very appropriate note for us to end here, Luai, and just to say that as a Jewish person, I'm very overwhelmed right now. As a Jewish person, to understand what you've sacrificed to speak up for the truth, it moves me in ways that I've never, really been moved before. And obviously we appreciate it because it's affecting us directly, but it's also affecting the entirety of our civilization, right? This is not, like we talked about at the beginning, you're not doing this because you have all of a sudden fallen in love with Jews and need to defend Jews in Israel. It's you understand that the radical ideologies that took over Yemen a long time ago are now making their way through the rest of the world.
And they're affecting every single one of us, including the Muslims themselves. You just don't know how destructive it is towards them. And so, Islamofascists and neo-Nazis.
Yeah. Having said all this, it's just really admirable. It takes a level of courage and strength that I don't think many people have. I think that it's pivotal that if there's one thing people take away from this, besides the vast amount of actual lessons and things you taught, is that we could all do a little bit more sacrificing of our own comfort to stand up for what we believe in and to make the world a better place. And you're a model for that. It's really been a pleasure to have you here this week and to be able to experience your journey through your eyes and to watch you interact with our students here and change the hearts and minds of many people on campus and beyond. And I've got a lot of gratitude, Luai. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. And to our listeners, this was definitely, I, without even checking, can tell you our longest episode ever, but I can also tell you that it's one of our most interesting. So I really hope that you enjoyed. I'm grateful for you listening. Thank you. We will be back in another 2 weeks, as we always are. In the meantime, if you haven't checked out any of our previous episodes, please take the time to do that now. But also go visit Luai on Instagram. Just Luai, Luai. So a lot there for us. Enjoy it. Follow him. Stay in touch with him. And stay in touch with us. See you next time. Thank you.